In this lecture, we are going to create a block metadata file. Similar to themes, a block can have a JSON file for describing the features of a block. This file is referred to as a block metadata file. We are required to create this file for every block. Let's give it a try. Inside the source directory, create a file called block.json. The file name must be called block.json. During the registration process of a block, WordPress will search for this specific file. Inside this file, we can describe our block. In the resource section of this lecture, I provide a link to the documentation page for this file. On this page, we are given a comprehensive example of what this file can look like. You can read the documentation for a full breakdown of each property. I highly recommend giving this page a read after creating our block. On this page, let's copy the schema property from the example. Next, let's head back to our editor. Inside the block file, let's add an object with the schema property. As we've learned, the schema property will help us verify the contents of the block file. It'll reduce the likelihood of a typo or error. If your editor can't find the file, you can always click for a direct URL. The URL provided by the documentation is a proxy. Let's begin configuring our block. The question is, what are we going to create? In my browser, I have a long list of blocks we'll be developing for this course. The first block that we'll be developing is a fancy header. If I hover my mouse over this header, an underline effect gets applied. Developing this block will be very simple. It'll help us get our feet wet with block development. Let's head back to our editors. Inside this file, add a property called API version with a value of 2. There are different formats for the block file. The format will determine the type of properties and values that can be added to this file. The latest format is version 2. For this course, we are going to be working with the latest version. The next property is called name. The value for this property will be Udemy Plus /fancy header. The name property will store a unique ID for our block. There is a specific format for the value. It's the name of our theme or plugin followed by the block's name. Our blocks are going to be prefixed with the Udemy Plus namespace. A / character separates these names. Afterward, let's add a property called title with the following value, fancy header. The title property can store a human-readable name. This value will be presented to the user on the Gutenberg editor. Up next, let's add a property called category. Blocks are organized into different categories for searchability. Our block should be added to a suitable category. For a complete list of categories, we can hover our mouse over the property. The description will provide us with the following categories: text, media, design, widgets, theme, embed. In addition, we have the option of creating a custom category. Let's use the text category. In my opinion, it's the best category for our block. After adding the value, let's move on to the next property. An icon can be added to a block by setting the icon property. There are two options for adding an icon. We can use a custom icon. Alternatively, WordPress has an icon set. In the resource section of this lecture, I provide a link to WordPress's custom icon set. By default, these icons are enqueued into the WordPress editor. We can start using them immediately. WordPress allows us to use the icon set for our custom blocks. They can be incredibly helpful for prototyping a block. Let's grab an icon called Star Full. Back in the editor, let's set the icon property to Star Full. The -icons prefix can be omitted from the name. WordPress will automatically apply this prefix to the name. Let's keep adding properties. The next property is called Description. As the name suggests, we can provide a description of our block. This description will be displayed on the front end. Let's set the description to the following: adds a header with a hover effect. Next, let's add an array called keywords. Clients may have dozens of blocks installed on their site. To make things easier, we can add keywords to help them search for our block. The keywords should describe your block. In this array, we can add various keywords as strings. Let's use the following keywords: header, underline, hover. Next, let's add a property called version with a value of 1. You may need to update your blocks after they've been released. You can specify the version by adding this property. Since this is a new block, we will set the version to 1. There's one more property left called text domain. The value for this property should be the text domain of our plugin. Let's set the text domain to Udemy Plus. Perfect. Our block is ready. I'm assuming you have the start command running. If it is, the file should have been copied over to the build directory. Opening this file will reveal a near identical file. The question is, why? It's simple. After the development phase of a block, we may want to distribute our block without the original source code. The source directory can be safely removed from the zip file. As long as the build directory is available in our plugin, the block should be completely functional. If that doesn't make sense, that's perfectly fine. Towards the end of the course, we are going to export our plugin and theme for production. It'll make sense after finishing the plugin. For now, let's move on to registering our block.